Files don't sit still, they accumulate. Part 1 fixed the night in room 5A. Part 2 mapped the first weeks, the perimeter statements in the early search. Part 3 follows the long pursuit, handovers to new teams, specialist tools that arrived later, public appeals that tried to turn attention into anchors, and the legal quiet that frustrates the curious but protects the possible. No revelations on command here, just a clear ledger. What was done, what those tools can and cannot say, and how later years tried to bend a very tight hour back open. This is the Midnight Mystery Archive, and this is part 3 of the Madeleine McCann case. Long-term cases move by handover. New teams inherit volumes of information in case files in a brief. Sometimes a review is done. They might audit the file to find gaps or recommend new actions. And sometimes there's even a reinvestigation. The reinvestigation is designed to push new lines of inquiry, re-interviews, or request new testing. Every remit changes tempo and language. A review asks, what do we actually know? A reinvestigation asks, what do we need to do next? The mechanics are boring, but they're essential to understand. A document census, which is what exists, where it lives, how it's indexed. Then there's a timeline harmonization, aligning statements, call records, admin logs, search notes, and media timestamps, so that 910 means the same thing across all the binders and files in the case's file. A task matrix. What are some of the open actions? What are actions that have been closed? What are some of the dependencies? And then of course there's a risk log. What could contaminate later charges if we say too much now? When the public hears new team, they hear fresh energy. Inside the room, it means fresh structure. The same facts, now in an order designed for the next step, not the last headline. Hold that architecture as we unpack the most argued tools of the later years of the Madeleine McCann investigation. In the months following the initial disappearance, specialist dogs arrived, and not during one night. Two functional categories here matter. Human remains detection HRD. They're trained to indicate odor associated with human decomposition. Odor is volatile. It moves with the air and it can persist at low levels on porous materials. And then there's blood detection, trained to indicate minute blood traces, often in tandem with light sources and presumptive chemical tests. The rules that keep you honest when using these types of dogs is a dog's indication is a lead. It is not a lab result. It tells you where to look and what to test. And context matters. Ventilation, time elapsed, surface type, whether it's tile, fabric, wood, and then cleaning agents that might have been used. Then there's confirmation, which is chemical. Swabs, presumptive tests, instrumental analysis, and then DNA if it's present and interpretable. What professionals do after an indication is simple. Fix the exact position. They might take photos and do grid measurements. Collect controls, nearby negative samples. Log environmental conditions. What was the temperature? What kind of airflow was there? Doors, windows, and what state were they in? And then prioritize lab orders with explicit questions. Is there human blood? Is there any profile? Is it a mixed profile? Is the result interpretable? Public conversations often skip the boring part. Dogs frame a search plan. Labs test hypotheses. Without that second step, the first remains purely suggestive. Once evidence is compiled, we then send it to the lab. Later year testing operates with some constraints. One of the first constraints is time. It degrades evidence. Then there's background. Holiday flats collect other people's DNA, fibers, cleaners, residues. And then, of course, there's mixtures as a result of that, which complicates interpretation. Minor contributors can sit below thresholds. So labs have to triage. Surfaces flagged by dogs or scene logic. Vehicle environments, hard plastics, carpet wells, contact points. And then they look at transferred items, things that moved between locations. And outcomes fall into different buckets. Corroborative, which is material consistent with the question and the robust enough in its quality to repeat. Inconclusive, signals present but below interpretive thresholds or mixed beyond clarity. And then, of course, there's no probative result. Those are tests that are done, but nothing helpful is gleaned from them. Investigators don't seek a perfect story. They try to reduce uncertainty. Sometimes the honest entry in the log is reduced little. That too is information, what not to build a theory upon. Then, of course, you go into re-interviews, and they happen because time allows for structure. The aim isn't to catch contradictions necessarily, it's to pin verbs. Who looked versus who listened? Which path precisely? Was it a pool cut through or a lane? The door positions at each check. How far were they open? Were they open at all, and which way? And intervening conversations that might have been had that nudge minute by minute alignment. Teams bring artifacts. A marked map, a copy of the restaurant chit time, a phone record, to help witnesses anchor their recollection. The result isn't necessarily a revelation. It's tighter tolerances. In an hour as tight as what we see in part 1, tolerances are everything. Then there's a review of the public appeals. Appeals evolve to compete with memories that fade. There's age-progressed imagery, high-contrast composites that travel well across print and broadcast. There were multilingual captions, consistent hotline branding to keep leads centralized in one location. Then there's e-fit-ups and composite. Only when witnesses recall circumstances does this become justified. Production is paired with careful wording to avoid overclaiming. The goal is recognition, not narrative. And then there's reconstruction segments, broadcast walkthroughs of the 9 to 10 p.m. hour, using the real paths and distances that invite new witnesses to anchor themselves in time and place relative to the incident at hand. A good appeal rarely solves a case, but a good appeal does yield one anchor you didn't have previously. Every major review of a case restages the geometry. You do walk tests, timed routes at night and by day, maybe from the tapas to the 5A by the pool, versus the lane. Then there's 5A, the lane corner back to the Smith area street. There are multiple paces, brisk, casual, distracted. But these are critical to understand what could have happened in that short period of time. Then there are sightline audits, what can and can't be seen from the tapas area at night, whether patio terrace movement would register, where sightlines break at corners and shrub lines. Then of course you do noise tests, how far a normal conversation carries, whether a shout at 10 p.m. and 5A would be audible at certain junctions. Then there's vehicle feasibility, an idle turn radius on narrow lane, where a car claws unseen, surface exits with late staff movement. The hour doesn't necessarily grow. The models inside it sharpen until only a few movement can survive all constraints simultaneously. That's the point. Not certainty, but elimination, of certain theory. Later teams also pushed the administrative edges. CCTV is a reality. In 2007, a resort might have partial coverage, reception, gates, while lanes have none. Retention windows are short. Reviews chase survivors. Airport cameras, fuel station DVRs, adjacent businesses whose units weren't overwritten. That's some of the data that they would look at. Then, of course, there was phone data. Roaming patterns are patchy. Call detail records can anchor call times, not precise location. Cell site coverage in coastal villages is broad. You use it to bound the impossible, not to pinpoint a person to one path. Then there's plate and vehicle records. Where local systems exist, teams look for unusual passes in the window. Failing that, they revert to human logs, parking attendants, late shift gate staff. It's imperfect, but sometimes enough to name a car for follow-up. Then there are additional lines of interest. Points in later years, authorities in different countries have publicly named lines of interest or a suspect. Our practice is to always use names with care and in context, acknowledging what such a statement is, public requests for information, a coordination tool, and what it is not, a verdict. Public naming does three things really well. It opens cross-border doors, targets appeals to locations and years, and it raises visibility. It also increases the need for silence, because active work and future charges can't inherit immediate trial. Longevity attracts noise. Late confessions with no anchors, recycled rumors, theories without observation. Teams apply filters. Observation first, time, place, and action. Then proximity is next. Does the claim intersect the hour or the corridors? Then there's corroboration. Two independent anchors outrank one dramatic story. And then there's a task burden. A lead that consumes days must promise specific falsifiable checks. This is investigative hygiene. It keeps the file from becoming a scrapbook. Cross-border work runs on requests, mutual legal assistance, registry letters, joint working groups. It is slow by design. It is done to protect the process. The scope must be tight. What records? Which period? Why is it relevant? Returns arrive with conditions, how they can be used, who can see them. Silence then follows, because pre-trial disclosure rules differ by country. From the outside, nothing is happening. Inside, the file is moving, and sometimes very fast, just not in a way that lends itself to the nightly news. After years of reteams and tools, we develop a pretty sobering ledger. The hour remains narrow and ordered. Later teams added specialist assets like dogs, targeted lab work, refined witness work, reconstructions, age-progressed imagery, and structured, centralized appeals. At points, authorities publicly identified lines of interest or a suspect to drive information flow. The file retains contested edges, the cause of the open window shutter, the identities behind two child-carrying sightings, and the mechanism by which someone moved a child through short distances in short minutes without detection. Clarity without overclaiming is the win here. If the case moves forward today or tomorrow, it's likely because of one of three triggers. There's a new anchor, a document, an image, or device artifact that tightens a route in the hour, something with time, geo-metadata, or a verifiable witness in the right place. The second is witness intersection. Someone whose presence intersects the corridors between 9:05 and 10:10 and who can be corroborated by another independent anchor. And then there's forensic reanalysis, better chemistry or interpretation methods tipping a sample from inconclusive to probable. None are cinematic, all are very ordinary, but that's how long cases crack, incrementally. The hour doesn't get bigger, even when the file does. Later years gave the case more tools, a wider vocabulary, and sometimes new names. They didn't change the basic map from part 1. It tested and retested in part 3 until the verbs line up: looked, listened, saw, carried, discovered. In part 4, we look at the parents, the partners, and the public record, and we go to the people who lived beneath the weight of a global case, what families endure, how investigators balance partnership with procedure, and where public narrative speaks louder than evidence. The same rules will apply. We'll use names with care, claims against the actual record with no shortcuts. This has been part 3 of the Madeleine McCann case in the Midnight Mystery Archive. Until next time.